"Daddy, I'm scared." A whisper in the cemetery, from a child he had never seen before. But that one sentence brought a former soldier to his knees and pulled him into a horrifying truth he never imagined would be part of his life. Why did the girl call him Daddy? And what made it impossible for him to walk away? The December wind howled through the bare trees of the Oregon Military Cemetery, carrying the scent of damp grass and the bitter chill of early winter. Raymond Cole stood silently in front of a grey stone headstone, holding a bouquet of white chrysanthemums. The engraving read, Elena Reyes, 1982 to 2019. Love never leaves it, only steps away. He leaned down and carefully laid the flowers at the base. His worn gloves trembled slightly, not from the cold, but from something deep inside his chest that had never truly healed. Elena had once been a military nurse. They fell in love among the blood and mud of makeshift camps in Afghanistan. She was strong, stubborn, and the only person who ever managed to pull Raymond out of the shadows of his past. But then came the diagnosis, infertility from a combat injury. And Raymond, feeling broken, chose to walk away. He didn't want to tie her down to a future without children. So, Elena quietly disappeared. 4 years later, she died in a car accident in another state. They never saw each other again. Raymond never truly understood why she never came back, never wrote, never called. And he never asked anyone either. Some questions, he believed, were better left buried in the cold earth. Then, a faint sob echoed from behind the headstone. Raymond turned. Just behind the grave, beneath the bare limbs of an old oak, a little girl, maybe 5 years old, sat curled on the ground. An oversized coat nearly swallowed her small frame as she clutched a worn-out stuffed animal. Her dark hair was tangled, her face streaked with tears and dirt. Her small shoulders shook now and then from the cold, but she made no sound except for the soft, choked sobs she seemed to be holding back. The girl was crying. No adult nearby. No car in sight. Raymond stepped closer. He had never been good with children, but having carried fallen brothers home from battle, he understood the silence that loss could bring. As he approached, the girl lifted her head. Large, red-rimmed eyes stared straight at him. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Mom said you'd come find me." Raymond froze. His heart clenched like a fist inside his chest. He knelt down, trying to keep his voice steady. "What? Did you just call me?" he asked carefully. "Daddy," the girl said again. "Mom told me. Daddy would come here, but he said I shouldn't say anything." "He? What's your name, sweetheart?" Raymond asked, a little more gently now. "Mia." She blinked. "My mum's name is Lena, but he made me call her Linda. I didn't like it." Raymond took a deep breath. Elena. She used to sign her letters as Lena. "You came here by yourself?" "I ran away, but I'll be back before dark, so I don't get scolded." Before Raymond could ask anything more, a man's voice called out from behind. "Mia! There you are!" A man approached quickly, wearing a long grey coat and a neatly knotted tie. He was tall, with slim-framed glasses and a vibrating phone in his hand. "Sorry," the man gave Raymond a polite smile. "She tends to wander off. I'm her foster father." Mia shrank back. She said nothing. Raymond stood up, his gaze turning cold. He didn't know why, but something in his gut, an instinct honed from years in the military, told him something wasn't right. "She just said her mother's name was Lena," Raymond said quietly. The man froze for a second, then broke into a laugh. "Oh, she meant Linda. She just mispronounced it. Kids, you know." "Thanks for keeping an eye on her," the man added with a slight nod, then took Mia's hand and started to walk away. Raymond didn't move. He watched. The little girl turned her head, her eyes full of confusion. As the afternoon sun stretched their shadows beyond the gravestones and out of sight, Mr. Lucas, the cemetery groundskeeper, well into his 70s, walked over with the help of his cane. "That little girl," he said, still looking in the direction they had gone. "She comes here every week, sits there, cries. No one ever asks why." Raymond turned to him. "What's her name?" I asked. She wouldn't say. But every time she walks past this grave, he pointed to Eleanor's, she stops, touches the photo, and cries, like she knows exactly who's buried there. Raymond looked down at the cold stone marker. A feeling he couldn't name began to stir, from somewhere deep in his soul. Raymond didn't leave the cemetery right away. He stood among the cold rows of gravestones, the late afternoon wind stinging his face, eyes fixed on the spot where Mia and that man had just disappeared beyond the iron gate. One sentence echoed in his head, soft, but cutting like a blade. "Daddy, Mummy said you'd come find me." Part of him wanted to dismiss it all, chalk it up to a child's mistake or a vivid imagination. But the name Lena, only Elena ever let him call her that. And now, a little girl had called him Daddy at Elena's grave. The wind hissed through the bare branches, stirring brittle leaves that circled around his boots. Mr. Lucas stepped closer and pulled something from his coat pocket, an old photo, slightly curled at the edges. "I found this about 2 weeks ago," he said. "It was lying near Miss Elena's grave. No one ever came back for it. But I don't think it belonged to a stranger." Raymond took the photo. It was faded, printed on regular paper, but clear enough to make out the image. In it, Elena sat at the edge of a hospital bed, wearing a light blue patient gown, cradling a newborn wrapped in a white blanket. She looked exhausted, but her eyes steady as ever. Beside her stood an older man, silver-haired, glasses perched on his nose, a mole on his left cheek. He wore a white coat, clearly a doctor. Raymond recognized him immediately. Doc Keller. His and Elena's closest friend during their years in the military, who later returned home to practice medicine in Eugene. Raymond turned the photo over. There was a handwritten note on the back, water-stained but still readable. St. Clare Hospital, Eugene, Oregon. March 4th, 2018. The day Eleanor gave birth. Raymond gripped the photo tightly. He didn't need anything else. The answer was right here. Eleanor had given birth. She hadn't told him, hadn't left a single official trace. But she had left this, if only a photo dropped by accident. "I held on to it because something didn't sit right," Mr. Lucas continued. "That little girl, she comes here every week, cries, always stands right at this grave, never once gets lost." Raymond gave a slow nod. He knew what he had to do next. The next morning, Raymond drove toward the city of Eugene. His pickup truck cut along Highway 58, then veered into the outskirts neighborhoods lined with mossy buildings, aged but familiar. St. Clair was where Elena had worked as a nurse after she left the service. And without question, it was where she had given birth. If anyone still had answers about Elena, it was Keller. The hospital wasn't large, but it was crowded. Raymond walked up to the front desk and placed a photo on the counter. "I'd like to verify an old case. Elena Reyes. She gave birth here in 2018. I'm sorry, we can't release—" "I'm her ex-husband," Raymond interrupted, handing over his military ID and a personal photograph. "I'm not asking for records, just confirmation that she gave birth here." The receptionist, a woman named April, glanced at the photo and hesitated for a moment. Then she picked up the phone. "I need Dr. Keller. Urgently." 10 minutes later, a door down the hallway swung open. An older man, tall, with white hair, stepped in. The moment he saw Raymond, he froze. "Raymond Cole? Doc, damn it, I thought you were dead in Mosul. Number Y just never came back." Raymond gave a faint smile. "I'm here about Elena." Keller pulled up a chair and sat down, quietly opening a file drawer. He retrieved an old folder and began flipping through the pages until he stopped at one with the hospital's faded watermark. April 3rd, 2018. Elena Reyes. Gave birth to a baby girl, 6.4 pounds. No complications. The baby's name? Mia Elena Reyes. Raymond clenched his jaw. Father's name. Left blank, Keller said slowly. She didn't put one down. He nodded, not surprised, but it still stung. "You knew she had the baby and never told me?" Raymond asked, eyes fixed on the file. "I asked her if she wanted to notify you. Elena just said don't. He chose to walk out of my life. Don't drag him back into it." Keller sighed. "I assumed that was a decision you both made." Raymond leaned back in the chair, eyes closing briefly. It didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like a piece of the truth had been buried with her. "She mentioned someone once," Keller continued. "Only once. But I remember her hands shaking. She said, 'I'm not afraid to die. I'm afraid he'll find the baby.' Who was he?" "She never said. But—" Keller hesitated, then opened another drawer and took out a white envelope. "I saw her receive letters from a place called New Roots. This one was left behind in her room after she was discharged." Raymond sat in his car as rain began to fall. He pulled out his phone and typed, "New Roots Shelter, Oregon." The first result popped up, Harlan Drake, Executive Director. He tapped the photo. A familiar face. The man from the cemetery. Neat suit, thin framed glasses, a harmless smile. But the eyes, completely empty. Was it him? The man Eleanor feared so much she hid her child from him. The one now keeping Mia and calling himself her father. If Eleanor left behind any clue, it might be buried deeper, beneath whatever that man was hiding. Raymond didn't get into the car right after leaving St. Clair Hospital. He stood under the awning, watching the light rain drift down over the parking lot. Elena's childbirth record sat in his coat pocket, heavy, like a silent accusation. Mia Elena Reyes. No father listed. He should have felt some relief. Elena once told him a doctor had diagnosed him as infertile, and back then, he believed her. Believed her enough to let go. Believed her enough to walk away, thinking he could never give her a real family. So why now, in the middle of a cemetery, did a child look up at him and call him Dad? Why did her eyes make him feel guilty? Maybe Mia was Elena's daughter with someone else. Maybe the child had nothing to do with him. But if that were true, why didn't Elena name the father? Why did she give birth in silence, vanish from all system records? And why did she die without leaving a single word behind? He had no answers. Only one feeling kept rising. Elena had tried to hide something, and she died before she could explain. If anyone still held those secrets, it could only be the man who took Mia away from the cemetery, Harlan Drake, director of a charity that sounded far too polished, too perfect. Raymond knew if he approached that place as an old friend or former husband, the door would slam shut. No one would let him see Mia. No one would allow him to dig into the past. He had no legal rights, no custody, no name on the birth certificate. But he had once served in the military, and he knew how to walk through a locked door. The New Roots Center sat tucked behind a row of maples at the end of a quiet street. White walls with mint green trim, automatic iron gates, cameras positioned exactly where they should be. The nameplate gleamed, a new beginning for single mothers and abandoned children. Raymond stepped out of the car in a plain suit, carrying an old brown leather briefcase. The business card in his jacket read, Ray Connors, Veterans Welfare Fund, a new identity, respectable enough to be granted access. The receptionist greeted him with a faint smile. After 5 minutes, the door opened and Harlan Drake walked in. Same man, neatly cut brown hair, navy suit, grey tie, a symmetrical face, nothing out of place, but the eyes, flat, glazed, cold, as if behind them there was nothing but emptiness. Mr. Connors, Harlan said, extending his hand, I hear you're interested in our sponsorship program. That's right, Raymond replied, shaking it. Our organization is looking to support a few centers with stable care models. Well, welcome. New Roots always opens its doors to those who truly want to help. Harlan led him down the hallway. The murals were colorful, but straight, precise. Children sat quietly in classrooms. No yelling, no fighting. Too quiet. At the end of the hall, Raymond glanced through a glass-paneled door. Mia was coloring. She wore a yellow dress. Her hair was neatly tied back. She focused intently on the paper in front of her, but she didn't speak. She didn't smile. She was drawing a house with no windows. That's Mia, Harlan said, his voice dropping. Her mother passed away 6 months ago. No known relatives. I'm the legally authorized guardian. Raymond looked over. No father. Number? There's no record of one, Harlan replied, without hesitation. Raymond pretended to flip through a small notebook. We're very thorough when it comes to legal matters. May I see the guardianship document? Of course. Harlan signaled to his assistant, then returned a few minutes later with a folder of certified copies. Raymond skimmed through it. Power of attorney, signed Elena Reyes, dated 3 weeks before her death. But the signature didn't match. He had kept handwritten letters from Elena. Her writing had a slight slant, delicate and flowing. This one was stiff, upright, as if someone had practiced mimicking her handwriting, but hadn't quite mastered it. Raymond nodded, pretending to jot something down. Meanwhile, Harlan leaned in slightly, his eyes narrowing. I appreciate your diligence. But, honestly, you seem unusually invested in one particular child. Is that so? Raymond asked. I've met a lot of people, Harlan said with a tight smile. Some are well-meaning, some are just curious, some think they're entitled. But in this system, rights come with paperwork. Raymond paused. Harlan kept smiling. If you continue to stir things up, I'll have no choice but to report it to protect the children. I understand, Raymond nodded. I'm just appropriately concerned, from someone who's seen what loss looks like. He left the center just as rain began to fall. Sitting in his car, Raymond didn't start the engine right away. He reopened the photo of the guardianship form, zoomed in on the signature, compared it with a picture of a letter Elena had written in 2016, saved in his phone. The difference was clear. That signature was forged, legal on paper, but wrong at its core. And if a man like Harlan had gone so far as to fake documents, then whatever he was trying to hold on to, it wasn't just legal guardianship of a child. Mia might not be his daughter, but if Eleanor had once trembled and kept the girl hidden from the system, then whoever she feared, it had never been him. Raymond left the New Roots Center under a light rain, one shoulder of his dark coat soaked through. Harlan hadn't said much, but every word felt measured, as if rehearsed in advance. There were no visible flaws in the paperwork, yet something felt unmistakably off. Eleanor's signature on the power of attorney stiff, lifeless, as if someone had mimicked it rather than truly signed. Raymond didn't say anything at the time, but a single question kept looping in his mind. What is he hiding? He drove around the city for a while, in no hurry to return home. What had happened today couldn't be shelved like some ordinary matter. Elena had once told him he was infertile, a cold, clinical diagnosis from the military hospital that had made him pull away, letting her go. But now, a birth certificate naming the child as Mia Elena Reyes, with no father listed, was unraveling everything. If Elena had hidden the child, and hidden the child's identity, what could have frightened her that much? Raymond pulled into a low-budget print shop in the suburbs. Sitting in the car, he turned on his phone and connected to an old data portal he once used for post-deployment projects. A few internal links from the Department of Veterans Affairs still functioned using his outdated ID. He typed, "Harlan Drake, activity history, sponsoring organizations." The search results came back disturbingly empty. No social media, no personal photos, no public records aside from a handful of boilerplate articles. Dedicated director, spiritual father, beacon of welfare. Every trace was spotless, too spotless. Just as Raymond leaned back to rest his eyes for a few minutes, his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number flashed on the screen. "You shouldn't go back to new routes." No name. No timestamp. The message vanished the moment he finished reading it. He jolted upright, glancing in the rearview mirror. A black SUV had just pulled up across the street. Someone in the passenger seat was facing him, features unclear, but the stare unmistakable. That face, that angle he had seen that man inside the center earlier that morning. The gaze held for a brief moment before the SUV sped off, disappearing as if it had never been there. That night, Raymond drove back to the secluded cabin on the edge of town, the place he had lived alone for the past 3 years. The house sat among old pines without a listed address. Only he and the seller knew its exact location. He shut off the engine and stepped onto the porch, then stopped cold. On the doorstep lay a neatly wrapped bundle of paper. No writing, no tape. He carefully unwrapped it. Inside was a printed copy of Mia's birth certificate, the exact version he had seen at the hospital. Alongside it, a faded color photo with frayed corners. Elena, standing beside a hospital bed, clearly pregnant. Her expression was calm, one hand gently resting on her belly. Standing next to her was a man. It wasn't Raymond. The photo had been torn in half. The remaining piece only showed the other person's left shoulder grey suit, white shirt cuff, a frame half a head taller than Elena. The face was missing, ripped away. But the build, the posture there, was something familiar. Familiar enough to send a chill down Raymond's spine. As he folded the photo, Raymond noticed a small piece of paper tucked behind it. Handwritten, scrawled in uneven letters. "Some children aren't born to be kept." He stood motionless at the doorway for nearly a full minute. No one knew this house. No one was supposed to know he lived here. And no one besides himself, Keller, and Harlan had ever laid eyes on that birth certificate. The next morning, Raymond returned to St. Clair Hospital. Dr. Keller's office was locked. The receptionist said, "Doctor." Keller took sudden leave last night, left no message, no follow-up appointments. No one knew when he'd be back. Raymond didn't need to ask further. The heavy stillness in his chest grew thicker. Someone was one step ahead of him. On the drive home, he slowed down, switching routes 3 times. At the junction between 2 counties, a silver sedan silently tailed him. Never passed, never fell behind. Smooth, like a shadow. Raymond suddenly turned into a gas station. The other car kept going, no turn, no brake. He watched it until it disappeared behind the trees. That night, he sat in the living room under dim light, holding the photo of Elena when she was pregnant. Beside it, a picture of Mia, coloring at the center. The resemblance was undeniable. The eyes, the shape of the nose, the way she held the crayon. The girl was part of Eleanor. But who was the other part? Who was the man in that photo? Why had Elena never mentioned him? And why were the people connected to all this vanishing one by one? He was no longer sure Mia was his child. But he was sure of one thing. If Elena had died to keep something buried, it wasn't something small. She had hidden the child from the system. She had whispered to Doctor Keller, "Don't let that man know her real name." So then, who was that man? 3 days after the confrontation with Harlan, Raymond received a strange phone call just before midnight. No number. No caller ID. He hesitated before picking up. A woman's voice came through, soft, quick, urgent. "Are you Raymond Cole? Who is this? I used to work at New Roots. I know about Elena, and I think I'm being watched." Raymond sat up straight. "Keep talking." "Not over the phone. We need to meet. Tomorrow night, 10 p.m. Old Central Library parking lot. Come alone. If you bring anyone, I won't show." Then she hung up. The next evening, Raymond arrived 15 minutes early. The lot was desolate, lit by flickering yellow lights. Right on time, a woman stepped out from behind a concrete pillar, slim build, hair tied up, wearing a face mask. "My name is Anna. I used to be a nurse at New Roots," she said quietly. "I knew Elena, and I knew Mia didn't belong there. Why are you only reaching out now?" Anna paused. "Harlan controls everything. Phones, schedules, who goes in and out. I tried to leave after Elena disappeared, but then my credit was flagged. My bank accounts were frozen. I lost my job, couldn't rent, couldn't travel. Only recently did an old friend help me create a new identity. I had no choice but to stay silent." Raymond nodded slowly. That explained why no one had ever come forward against Harlan. He didn't just hide the truth. He destroyed the lives of those who knew too much. Anna glanced around nervously, then continued quickly. Elena was kept isolated at the center. No real name. On paper, she was Linda. Harlan made the girl Mia call her Linda and forbid her from using her real name. But I once overheard Elena whisper, "My name is Lena. Remember that." Raymond remembered it was exactly what Mia had said at the grave. Before Elena disappeared, she handed me a bundle of letters. She told me, "If I don't come back, find a man named Raymond Cole. He's Mia's father." But the next morning, my office was ransacked. The letters were gone. I quit and vanished not long after. "Did you manage to keep anything?" "Just one page. I hid it in the back of my shirt. A place no one would think to check," Anna said, pulling out a crumpled piece of paper. Raymond unfolded it. Eleanor's handwriting. Unmistakable. "Raymond, if you're reading this, I might already be gone, but Mia is your daughter. I used to believe hiding her was the only way to keep her safe. But if this letter has reached you, it means I was wrong. Please keep her close. Don't let Harlan take her like he did the others." Raymond stared at the handwriting. Part of him wanted to believe. The other part held back. He looked up. "Did you know? Elena once told me I was infertile." Anna shook her head. She never said it out loud, but I had a feeling. She used to look at the photo in her wallet and cry quietly, like she'd lost something precious. But Mia has your eyes. The words stopped Raymond cold. His mind drifted back to that military clinic years ago. The doctor's voice. Low sperm motility. Extremely low chance of conception. Not complete infertility, but enough for him to quietly walk away from Elena's life. If Elena had gotten pregnant, was it a miracle or proof of something far bigger? On the drive back from the hospital, Raymond didn't head straight home. Instead, he took a detour to a small private lab on the outskirts of Portland, a place he remembered, a place where he once knew a lab tech back when he did medical support work on base. The sealed bag sat untouched in the glove compartment. He opened it and pulled out a soft, pale pink knit cap, slightly worn, one thread unraveling along the edge. Mia had dropped it the day at the cemetery. That day, after the man in the suit had taken her, Raymond had stood frozen, watching them disappear. Only when Mr. Lucas, the cemetery manager, returned, holding something in his hand, did Raymond snap out of it. "She left this behind," Lucas said, handing over the cap. "Found it on the bench. Still had some hair stuck in it." Raymond took it, not knowing exactly what he was holding on to. But a soldier's instinct and the quiet ache of a father who'd never gotten to be one told him to keep it, as silent proof. Inside the edge of the cap, several soft, light brown hairs were tangled in the threads. He didn't touch them, just slid the cap into a new envelope the moment he got home, sealed it, labeled it with the date. Now he placed the envelope on the counter. The lab tech looked at the note, then up at him. "You're requesting a paternity test." Raymond nodded. "Compare this sample to mine. The child's name is Mia Elena Reyes. How soon do you need results?" "Rush it. I need to know as soon as possible." The tech nodded. "We can get it done in 24 hours, if you approve priority handling." Raymond didn't hesitate. He signed the form, paid the fee, and stepped out into the fading afternoon light. Sunlight danced on the pavement. But all that filled his mind was one question. He'd written it on the request form, under alleged relationship. Father-daughter. And as he left the lab, Raymond didn't feel relieved. It felt like unlocking a door, without knowing whether there'd be light behind it, or a drop into darkness. If Mia really was his daughter, then Harlan was holding hostage the only part of Elena he had left. And if she wasn't, why would Elena lie to the world, but tell him the truth? The message came at 7:42 a.m., just a single line. "The results are ready. Please come in to receive them in person." Raymond sat in his car for several minutes, staring at the screen as if it might change. The sky beyond the windshield was bleak, the sunlight still struggling to break through the thick cloud cover. He didn't turn on the heater. The numb cold against his skin seemed to match the state of his mind. Eventually, he pushed open the door and stepped out. The clinic was quiet, the faint scent of antiseptic lingering in the air. The young nurse at the front desk gave him a polite smile and a small nod. "Mr. Raymond Cole, right? Please wait just a moment." She disappeared into the back, leaving him alone with the distant hum of a printer. A minute later, she returned and set a white envelope on the counter, unsealed. No explanation. Raymond sat down and reached for the envelope like it was something explosive. Inside was a single sheet of paper. The first line, bold and unmistakable, read, "Conclusion. Paternal relationship confirmed with a probability of 99.997%. The numbers hit like punches to the chest. He shut his eyes, gripping the paper tightly. There was no wind, but his heart pounded like he was back in combat. He walked quickly out of the clinic. Once inside the car, he didn't start the engine. He just sat there, forehead resting on the steering wheel. For a moment, the world outside went quiet. All he could see was Mia's eyes wide, unblinking, looking straight at him at the cemetery that day, calling him Dad, without a second of hesitation. Eleanor hadn't lied. She had carried that secret, raised their child, shielded her from everything. Alone. For him. And for the little girl who now had no one else but him to protect her. Raymond didn't drive home. He turned down Forest Hill Road, heading straight to the military cemetery. The sky was still overcast. The rain hadn't started, but the wind was picking up. No one was at the gates. No witnesses needed. He stopped in front of the stone he knew too well. Elena Reyes, 1986 to 2021. Still here. Still yours. No flowers. No ritual. just a man standing before the grave of the only woman who ever loved him, without asking for anything in return. He sat beside the headstone, unfolded the DNA result, and let the wind lift its edges, but never carry it away. "You really pulled it off," he said, voice low, breath steady. "You kept her safe all those years, never let anyone get near her, not even me, not the system. You gave everything, even your life, just to keep our daughter protected." The wind grew stronger. Leaves scattered around the grave. Raymond stared at the headstone, as if she were standing there, listening to every word. "I used to think I couldn't have kids. The doctors said my sperm count was too low, chances near zero. I thought that was a sentence. I stepped away from you, thinking that was noble. But really, I was just running. And you stayed, and did what was right. Alone." He stood up. "You carried it all by yourself, but not anymore. I'm getting Mia out of that place, no matter what it takes, no matter who I have to face." As he left the cemetery, Raymond didn't look back. In his coat pocket, the test result was folded neatly, pressed close to his chest, closest to his heart. This time, he wasn't asking permission. He was taking action. A father, a former soldier, a promise made to the dead. A rescue before it's too late. Raymond returned to Attorney Brandt's office at noon, on the same day he received the DNA results. The certification stating 99.997% paternal relationship sat on the oak desk. The newly opened guardianship file folder was already thick with documents, affidavits, photos of Elena's grave, a map of the New Roots facility. Brandt flipped through the pages, tapping his pen against the edge of the desk, a habit of his when deep in thought. "The DNA test is a strong blow," Brandt said slowly, "but Harlan still holds the power of attorney under the child's mother's name. The court's going to demand the original. All we have is the copy you remember with your eyes, and that's legally worthless. If you can prove the original is forged, the whole case could pivot overnight." Raymond clenched his fingers. "I've seen that signature. It's not Elena's. But the court needs more than your word." Brandt looked up. "If the document is stored at the center, you'll need a clear photo or a time-stamped copy. Even better, any document showing Harlan abused his guardianship over children without family. Then this wouldn't just be a custody dispute, it would become a federal criminal case." Raymond fell silent. His mind drifted back to the memory of the archive room he had briefly glimpsed before, rows of neatly arranged file cabinets marked Orchid Class, the code Mia. He hadn't had time to dig further. It could also be where the truth behind Elena's years of fear was buried. "You think the court will accept photos of original documents?" Raymond asked. "As long as the full page is visible, including any stamps and signatures. Ideally, include metadata proof that the photo was taken on site, at a specific time." Raymond nodded. The decision crystallized in an instant, sharp and clear, like the sound of a safety catch snapping off a trigger. He left the office, ignoring Brandt's voice calling after him. "Be careful. Don't risk your life." Night fell quickly. Raymond parked in the shadows behind a row of old maple trees, 1 block away from New Roots. He carried no weapons, just a multi-tool, a red flashlight, noise-cancelling earpieces, and a mini camera clipped to his chest, set to automatically record and timestamp. A dark coat, hood pulled low over his face. The infiltration skills he once used in the worst combat missions kicked in again, silent, precise. No room for nerves. He slipped over the herb garden fence. The padlock on the logistics shed was old. It gave way in 4 seconds with a simple hook. The hallway inside was dark, carpeted to muffle sound. Outdated security cameras hung from the ceiling. He waited for them to pan away before crossing, moving in rhythm with their sweep like a well-rehearsed dancer. The records archive was behind 2 doors. The mechanical lock required an 8-digit code. He held up the red light to check for dust patterns on the keypad, deduced the 4 most frequently used digits, permutated the combinations in his head, and on the 3rd attempt, the lock clicked open. Drawer ORC42 held the file labeled MIAELENAREYES. The first page, a pristine copy of the power of attorney. The next, the original, with smudged ink, yellowed paper, and a stiff, unnatural signature reading Elena Reyes, completely inconsistent with the handwriting in her letters. The top left corner bore the New Route seal, but it lacked the mandatory medical file number, a critical flaw. Raymond held the camera close, snapping detailed shots, official stamps, signature dates, the trembling pen strokes. He kept flipping through the pages until he landed on a form titled Psychiatric Evaluation of Mother, Unfit for Custody. Different ink color. No doctor's signature. He photographed everything. He didn't stop there. Raymond opened the cabinet drawer beside it labeled XFAM. Inside were dozens of children's files. Strange names. The Guardian section slashed through in red. At the bottom of each folder, the same phrase repeated, Recommendation for Overseas Transfer, Section 11F. El Salvador, the Czech Republic, Morocco, no government documents, only bilingual agreements stamped with logos from obscure humanitarian partner organizations. Raymond picked up one file. Tyler James, age 7, no known relatives, recommended transfer, El Salvador. Another file, Anais K., age 6, fully cooperative, transfer, Czech Republic. No court orders, no verification forms, just a repeated pipeline. Orphaned child, international sponsorship, medical transfer, disappeared. Harlan wasn't raising these children, he was monetizing them. Each child was a floating asset to apply for grants, pull funds from international charities. And Mia, she might have been the most valuable of all. Eleanor had been a nurse, had a clean background, and Mia, adorable, calm, well-behaved, looked like every donor's dream. Raymond stepped back, eyes wide. Now he understood why Elena had run, and why. She hadn't lived long enough to explain. He swept his camera across the entire drawer, capturing every document, then closed it carefully. Footsteps echoed in the distance. Raymond slipped into the laundry room, holding his breath. A security guard passed by, flashlight skimming past the door, then faded away. He moved into a side hallway and stopped at a door labeled Mia, room A3. Through the thin curtain, he could see her sleeping, clutching a worn-out fox plush, a small photo frame pressed to her chest. In the warm glow of the nightlight, her face looked so peaceful, it made his heart ache. Raymond placed a hand gently on the glass. He couldn't wake her, couldn't take the risk now. He had to get her out legally, safely, with evidence no one could ignore. He turned away, retraced his path, and slipped off the property before the guards switched shifts. Once back in his car, he sent every photo file to 3 email inboxes. Brandt, a well-known investigative journalist with a massive independent blog, and Derek Shaw, an old friend now working with the Federal Investigations Unit. Each email included one line, "If I disappear, please bring this truth to light." Raymond started the engine and drove off into the night. On the dashboard, his body cam still blinked red, recording one final image of Mia through the window, a living witness to the vow he had just engraved into his heart. He would get her out of the darkness. What was supposed to be a charity center had turned out to be a secret trafficking station for nameless children. And now, a father who once missed his moment held the key to dismantling it all. Harlan Drake didn't yet know that tonight his files had been opened wide. But morning was coming, and the truth does not stay silent when Raymond's footsteps have already begun echoing through the dark. The next morning, Raymond woke up to a message from Attorney Brandt. "Don't go home. There's a temporary hold order pending investigation for unlawful entry. Before he could reply, his phone buzzed again this time. An alert email from his home security system. The rear door camera had been disabled at 4 a.m. Someone had entered. Raymond clenched the phone. Harlan knew. He immediately drove to an old auto repair shop in the suburbs, where Derek Shaw, a longtime friend from his days in federal investigations, was waiting. Inside the car, Raymond opened a briefcase and handed over a printed copy of all the documents he'd gathered the night before. Derek flipped through the pages, his expression darkening. "This guy didn't just forge a power of attorney," he said. "He's running a full-scale operation, basically human trafficking, disguised as legal social sponsorship programs. And what's worse, he's got protection from above." "Above?" Raymond frowned. Derek nodded. "The organization listed on those transfer papers. It's not even registered to operate in the US, but it's been flagged in 3 federal investigations, all of which were shut down midway." Raymond leaned back in his seat. A sharp, pounding headache climbed from the base of his neck to his forehead. "You've got 2 options now," Derek continued. "1, wait for him to make his move. Smear campaign, police involvement, dragging public opinion to his side. 2, go public first. Name names, drop the evidence, tell the whole damn story, hit back." Raymond didn't need time to think. "Do you know someone who can help me go public?" Derek pulled out a slip of paper, a phone number, signed Isla Rios, independent journalist, Phoenix Watch. "She exposed a similar case in Texas, but you'll need to let her verify everything." That afternoon, at a small cafe in Portland, Raymond met Ayla. She was thin, with cropped hair, fingerless gloves, and laser-sharp eyes. Barely 5 minutes into their conversation, she asked, "Are you willing to go on record? Real name, real face." "There's Mia," Raymond replied. "I've got nothing left to lose." Ayla gave a slight nod. "Good. But first, I need to fact-check everything." She opened her laptop, plugged in the USB Raymond handed her, and went through the image files one by one. When she reached the forged power of attorney, she paused. "This the original?" "From his file cabinet." "When did you take the photo?" "Last night. Chest cam recorded with timestamp." She said nothing more. Her eyes never left the screen. 2 days later, while Raymond lay low in a warehouse on the south side of town, the morning news broadcast aired. Exclusive. Internal investigation launched into New Roots Charity Center. Allegations of forged documents and unlawful child transfers. The footage was pulled from data Raymond had provided Mia's name forged in official records. The international transfer papers, missing legal seals, overlaid with the reporter's voice. Why does a facility praised as a guardian angel store dozens of files of unaccompanied children with destinations marked outside the territory? And why was a deceased mother's signature dated 3 weeks after her death? Less than 30 minutes later, Raymond got a call from Harlan. The voice was calm, even. "You think you're clever, don't you?" "I just want my daughter. And for the other kids to be safe. You chose to go to war. So get ready, because in this one, there are no rules." The call ended. Raymond stared at the black screen. At that moment, he didn't yet know. Harlan had already filed a formal complaint, accusing him of trespassing, intimidation, and extortion, along with security footage showing Raymond sneaking into the facility. The clips were carefully edited to paint him as a dangerous intruder. A follow-up segment aired shortly after the main exposé. Former soldier accused of exploiting parental claim to pressure charity center. Public reaction split down the middle. Some believed Raymond. Others just saw an unstable old veteran with a savior complex. Raymond said nothing, because he knew what still remained the truth, and his daughter. Mia was still inside that place, and now, if he didn't win this fight through the law, there would be no other way to get her out in one piece. The first blow had been struck. But in a world where power hides behind charity, is a lone father really enough to bring down an entire network? The hearing opened at 9 a.m. on Monday at the Multnomah County Courthouse. Out front, a long line of reporters, handheld signs, and New Root Center supporters flanked both sides of the gate. Several major newspapers ran bold headlines: "Veteran Sues Charity Center, Biological Father or Troublemaker." Raymond walked through the crowd without covering his face, without lowering his head. At his side was Brandt, an aging attorney nearing retirement, clutching a thick case file, eyes sharp as a hawk's. Isla Rios was there too, standing just outside the press zone, camera in hand, ready to twist the truth at any second. The courtroom wasn't large, but it was packed. On one side, Harlan sat adjusting his tie, eyes full of confidence. On the other, Raymond sat upright, gaze fixed firmly on the judge. Judge Goodman spoke. "We are now opening case 2482-M. The plaintiff, Mr. Raymond Cole, is petitioning for legal guardianship of Mia Elena Reyes, currently under the lawful care of Mr. Harlan Drake, representative of the New Root Center." Brandt stood. His voice was deep, steady. "Your Honor, we intend to prove the following. 1. That the biological relationship between the plaintiff and Mia is indisputable. 2. That the guardianship authorization held by Mr. Drake is forged. And 3. That the New Root Center has committed serious violations of child protection laws and custodial rights." Harlan's attorney gave a dismissive smirk. "And we will demonstrate that Mr. Cole is merely exploiting a DNA connection to gain access, manipulate media attention, and intimidate a charitable institution that has faithfully cared for Mia for the past 6 years." Raymond held back his anger. He'd been on the battlefield, he'd seen blood, betrayal. But the feeling of being slandered because of the truth, that was a whole different kind of wound. The morning passed with the document verification process. Brandt presented the DNA results legally obtained and verified by the Forensic Center. A murmur swept through the room when the name Raymond Cole was confirmed as the biological legal father. Harlan sat motionless. His expression didn't change, but his lower lip twitched slightly. When it came to the power of attorney, Harlan's attorney submitted a copy. The signature, Elena Reyes, appeared neat and evenly rounded. But Brandt quickly presented a scanned original that Raymond had obtained from the Records Center. "Your Honor, this is an image of the power of attorney found in the New Roots file cabinet. It was never reported to any official agency. The signature does not match any prior documents signed by Elena Records from the hospital, the divorce proceedings, or even a personal letter she wrote to Raymond in 2017. The judge tilted his head. "That's a serious allegation. Is there a handwriting expert present?" "Yes, Your Honor." A handwriting expert took the stand. After a brief analysis, she concluded, "The signature on the power of attorney is forged. The likelihood of a match is less than 1.5%. A ripple of shock moved through the courtroom. Harlan's attorney objected. "This evidence was obtained through unlawful entry and should be inadmissible." Brandt didn't blink. "We're not presenting the original, only revealing a concealed truth. And if the court permits, we can call an additional witness, someone who directly observed suspicious activity at New Roots." The judge nodded. "Proceed." The rear doors of the courtroom opened. A young woman with long brown hair stepped forward, visibly trembling. Her name was Ariana, age 19. She had lived at the New Root Center until she was 17. She avoided looking at Harlan, her eyes focused only on Raymond. "I saw Mr. Drake force some young mothers to sign away custody of their children. Some didn't speak English. Some were under sedation. They were threatened." "And Mia?" Brandt asked. She hesitated. "Elena. She used to volunteer there. She was scared. She said they threatened to report her as mentally unstable. She ran, took Mia with her. I think they tried to chase her. Raymond lowered his head, his lips pressed tight. Eleanor had done everything quietly, alone, just to keep their daughter safe. At the end of the hearing, Judge Goodman did not issue an immediate ruling. He called for a 2-day recess to review the full documentation and verify the new witness testimony. Raymond stepped out of the courthouse into the pale sunlight. Reporters swarmed him, microphones aimed straight at his face. "Do you have anything to say, Mr. Cole?" Raymond spoke just one sentence, his voice hoarse. "I'm not fighting for my reputation. I'm just trying to bring my daughter home." One forged signature, one piece of evidence kept hidden, one little girl robbed of her childhood. The battle isn't over yet, but light has begun to shine into the place Harlan once controlled without question. And for the first time in 6 years, justice is finally starting to hear the voices of those who were silenced. 3 days after the trial, the Multnomah County Court issued its final ruling. Legal custody of Mia Elena Reyes was granted to Mr. Raymond Cole, her biological father, based on verified documentation and the absence of any history of violence, psychological instability, or criminal behavior. Harlan's guardianship papers were declared null and void, grounded in evidence of forgery and handwriting expert testimony. At the same time, the child records at New Roots were officially sealed pending a federal investigation. Harlan was taken into custody to assist with ongoing inquiries and formally charged with abuse of guardianship, document falsification, and the illegal transport of a minor overseas under the guise of charitable sponsorship. That afternoon, Raymond arrived early. He didn't want to wait even a minute longer. There were no reporters, no distant clicks of camera shutters, no curious eyes peeking through fences. Just the fading warmth of the sun spilling across the backyard of New Roots, a quiet sanctuary tucked behind the building, where autumn leaves had begun to scatter in patches of gold and red. Under a wide maple tree, Mia sat alone in the grass, drawing circles in the dirt with a stick. Her shoes were dusty, the cuffs of her jeans slightly frayed. In one arm, she clutched the same old stuffed fox, its seams loose, its fur worn thin at the ears. Raymond stood still for a moment, just watching her. His chest rose and fell, heavy with something he couldn't name, grief, hope, disbelief, all tangled into one. Then, slowly, he took a step forward. Mia looked up. Her eyes caught his instantly. There was no confusion this time, no hesitation. "Daddy." That word, spoken not with fear or doubt, but with quiet certainty, hit Raymond harder than anything he'd felt on a battlefield. He stopped in his tracks, heart thudding. Those 2 syllables used to be a question. Now they were a homecoming. He knelt on the grass, arms open wide but steady, not daring to breathe. Mia didn't run. She launched. She crashed into him, with the force of a heartbeat finally being heard, wrapping her small arms tightly around his neck. Her body shook, not from fear, but from everything she had held in for 6 long years. "I was afraid you weren't coming," she whispered into his collar. Raymond pressed his face into her shoulder. His voice cracked as he held her. "I'm here now," he murmured, "and this time, I'm not going anywhere." For a long while, neither of them moved. The wind rustled the branches above them, and somewhere nearby, a wind chime rang faintly in the distance. But in Raymond's arms, the world narrowed down to the fragile warmth of a child he never knew he had, and now couldn't imagine life without. That evening, he took her home, not to a mansion, not to a new start across the country, just to a modest, weathered house at the edge of the Oregon woods, where silence used to be the loudest thing inside. A home filled with shadows and photographs no one looked at anymore. Until now. Inside, Raymond opened the hallway cabinet and pulled out a picture frame. Elena's photo. Her eyes still kind, still strong. He placed it gently on the living room table next to a brand new one he'd had printed that afternoon. Mia, smiling with missing teeth, cradled in his arms on the steps of the county courthouse. Each time he passed those photos, he'd whisper to them, almost like a prayer. She'd be proud. Of both of us. Life didn't become perfect, but it became real. Some nights, Mia jolted awake at the sound of motorcycles roaring down the road, her eyes wide with fear. Other times, she curled up silently and asked if her mum could still hear her from the sky. Raymond never rushed her. He never promised that the nightmares would go away. He only promised one thing, that he'd be there when they came. He learned how to braid her hair clumsily at first, with too many uneven strands, and how to make her eggs just the way she liked, with ketchup in a smiley face. He read fairy tales at night, stumbling over voices and characters, and pretending he didn't see her peek under the covers to check if he was still beside her. He told her about Elena too, not in sorrow, but in gratitude. He told her how Elena used to grip his hand tight during thunderstorms, how she once dragged him into a muddy field just to see wildflowers bloom after a downpour. He told her that her middle name, Eleanor, wasn't random. It was a gift, her mother's way of staying with her, even after she was gone. One night, as they folded laundry together on the living room floor, Mia looked up from a pink sock and asked, "Daddy, why didn't Mum tell you about me?" Raymond paused. He set the shirt down and turned to face her fully, meeting her small but searching eyes. "Because she was scared," he said slowly. "She thought keeping you safe meant keeping you hidden. And she didn't think I'd ever come back." Mia blinked. "Were you mad at her?" Raymond took a breath. He pulled her into his lap, letting her lean back against his chest. "No," he said softly. "I wasn't mad at her. I was mad at myself, for staying away too long, for not coming home sooner." Mia was quiet. Then she said, "But you're here now." He held her a little tighter. "Yeah," he said, "and I'm never leaving again." 3 months later, Ayla Rios released her investigative documentary titled Orchid Class: The Forgotten Children, exposing the entire system profiting off orphans under the guise of humanitarian aid. The video garnered millions of views. Congress launched hearings, more victims came forward, and the New Roots Center was shut down permanently. As for Raymond the soldier, who once believed he had no reason left to live now, each morning he wakes up with a purpose: to make breakfast, tie a ponytail, and walk Mia to her new preschool. No need for glory, no thirst for revenge, just peace. Raymond is far from perfect. He once turned away. He once lost everything. But when the truth stood before him, he didn't look away again. This story isn't just about a father finding his daughter. It's about those who have the courage to step into the dark, just to pull a small life back into the light. Not everyone has the strength to believe in something uncertain. But sometimes, taking just one step toward the truth can save an entire life. What would you do if the one person who needed your trust was a child with no voice? And how are you doing? Have you been taking time lately to care for yourself? Thank you for staying with us through this story. If something in it touched your heart, even just a little, feel free to leave a comment. We always read them, and we always care truly and sincerely.